So these are the kind of questions that are going to come about. So right now, as you can see, I deleted, but I'm going to Control Z and go back. So right now, Christina, you are what you say, you're stuck with these marching ants, right? So the thing to remember about the marching, I'm going to zoom in so you can see this. So you see the marching ants is on the edge here, and they're on the edge here. But here's what I forgot to show you. I'm in a document right now where I have to isolate all of these pictures, all of these individual characters. I need to duplicate, because if I delete, I'm going to delete the photograph. So what you want to do is you want to right click with your mouse on the layer and you duplicate. And then you say, okay, and you basically turn that one off. So that will become what we call a master source, so that you can always go back to it if you miss something. So now remember, the important thing about when you're on a computer is that the computer understands what your selection is. Teaching this course as long as I have, the majority of beginners are not usually on the right layer. So be sure that, and the computer tells you when something is highlighted by right. So I'm on the right layer now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out so you can see what we have. And I'm going to, now the marching ants is on the outside. So if I do delete, just the delete key is all you need, Christina.
Okay.
So that's right. But I wanted to show you that be sure to duplicate it if there's another pictorial element in there that you want. You see? So now the other thing I want to go I'm going to do Control Z again to bring it back. Remember, there's two things that happen on those marching ants. You either want the background to be gone, or you might want to inverse this under select, and that gives me the opposite. So sometimes, often I forget. It's like, oh, I have to go back to Control Z, and I have to go back to inverse, and then I delete. So Control Z multiple times should give you what you are backing up your steps, but you also have this window. And to get rid of the marching ants, Christina, which is a very important tool, is Control D. So Control D unlocks the marching ants so that you can recreate more ants somewhere else. Now, to answer Splashy's question about, okay, I got this isolated, I've extracted what I wanted, how do I get this into my hyperrealism? The thing to do that with that, and this gets a little tricky because it's Windows, you have to remember you have layers just on your desktop. So for instance, if I minimize this, I could minimize my browser, I could minimize my note-taking, I could minimize my Zoom, and here's this OneDrive that keeps reminding me of something I don't want to do right now. So now I can go back to Photoshop. So I've cleared my desktop. So this little arrow up here is going to give you the whole list of all the files that you have opened. And it's checked, as you can see, I'm on Girls on Beach. So I'm going to go to my hyperrealism. Now the hyperrealism, if you haven't created it yet, Splashy, and this might be where your question is, you want to go to that File New, go to Print, and make it be 13 by 19, but change the resolution to 150. And keep it RGB. And here's the transparency that you want to also make it be. So you would change it to 13 by 19, depending on if it's horizontal. And you can change that later with Canvas as well, and then create that. So that's what I did on Tuesday for us. I created a hyper_2. I'm on a progress file name now. I could upload it do File, Save As, save on my computer, and make it, remember we talked about this on the file names. I'm going to make it 3 now. So now I have a backup and so forth, so that now if something happens, I can go back to 2 and I've only lost a day of work. So now let's go back to those girls on beach. This is your question. So the way to get your files imported into the final composite is, because you've extracted everything in the original source, is you take the tab up here, which is all your files opened. This arrow just shows more of them that they can't show you. And you mouse down on the tab and you drag it down. Now, because I was just on my hyper is here. Sometimes it can be hidden, but it's keeping it here. So now I have my file here, and I need to get this guy into here, which is the composite, the hyper assignment, which is this. So you need your move tool. So remember, all of these tools, if you roll over them, they will tell you what they do. So, you know, just if you can't find it, and remember, as you're learning, every time you crack software, you're going to be as frustrated as you are in Photoshop. It happens to everyone who's cracking software for the first time. It's a needle in a haystack. You have to keep looking at what layer are you on, what tool am I on, do I have Control D, you know, are the marching ants gone? Because if the marching ants are still on in your picture, no other tool will work. So sometimes when I don't even know what the problem is, I'll just do Control D automatically, just in case there's a marching ants that I don't see. So to go back to this, to get this image into my final composite, I'm going to use the Move tool, which is this, and I mouse down on the subject matter and I drag and drop it right in. Now you can see that, and I actually can drag this back into the tabs. Watch what happens. Now it's back to my tabs, and I'll go back to my hyper, which is this. And you see, even with that resolution, what was it, the girls on the beach? This resolution was, image size was 150, and that's all I get is 4 inches by 3 inches. And so when I go back to my hyper, that's as big as I can get it. If this was for print, I would not be able to enlarge it, as we spoke about it this morning. So because this is a print project, I'm going to keep it small. Now, it might be just something that when I use my Manhattan, when I get my Manhattan picture, let's see, where is that one? I think this was on here. Go back to all of them. That's where I'm going to use for water, New York City here. So I might, and I could bring this in right now. Say I want to use a whole picture. I don't want to extract it. So let me check my image size. Remember how we do this all the time? It's 300, or it's not going to be very big. So I'm going to have to change it to 150. Now it's 10 by 150, but I'm not corrupting the resolution. And that's the point to be made. When you change it down with this sampling off, it will keep the good resolution that it was originally. So I'll say, okay, I'll do that same move. I want this whole picture in my layout now. So I'm going to mouse down on the tab, drag it. Now you notice I don't have my hyper. So I'm going to come back over here, get my hyper. There's my hyper. Here's the image I want to bring in. And I mouse down, and there's my picture. And now that is what it is, so I can close this out. And the important thing to remember is you never want to overwrite your source. So I'm going to say no, because that will keep it to the original format that it was. So that's important on that. So now you see I have my picture. I can't get that anything bigger. So I'm going to have to, and I probably will bring, now you notice how she's not in front? All I have to do is go to my layers here and just push it up. Now she's in front. And so on this one, let me see, let me turn all my layers on. I'll turn them all off. There's that one. There's my Manhattan. Now here's another important tool. I'm going to make a composite so that I need to know where my horizon is. So when you're working in Adobe programs, mostly for web or for print, video as well, you want to turn on your rulers. So you go View, Rulers. What that does is it gives you the rulers on the horizontal and the vertical. So I'm going to place my guide here. I'm going to move this to the left, and I'm going to mouse down on the guide. Mouse down, and I'm mousing down, and I'm going to bring this up so that my horizon is here. So I know that this upper part is going to be all sky. And then you can do the same thing with the vertical. Mouse down, and I can create verticals. Now, because I have these guides here, you can actually bring the guides to set up what we call the rule of thirds. And we'll talk about this in the next session. I might not talk about it until, we'll talk about it before we go away for the weekend. But the rule of thirds is a format that is utilized by photographers, by art directors, by graphic designers, by cinematographers, primarily for a composite that is a horizontal or a vertical. And that's video, right? Video is the same way, which is why I said cinematographers or even editors. And what it is, it's a theory about focal points. So you could use these guides to set up a focal point so that you know that the focal point has to be in one of these crosshairs. So I've got a little bit more on the bottom here. So I'm going to bring this down and bring this down so I can get my rule of thirds. So in other words, these parts have to be equal in size. So I'm ballparking it just with my eyes. You could be very meticulous and do it mathematical, or you could just be looking at it like I am. All right, those are equally, proportionately well done. Now here, I have to change my vertical. And so I'm going to move this in a little bit more. I want to see equal parts right here, proportionately. And I sort of love doing this because I have I like to say I have a very good eye on just eyeballing it. And it's probably because I didn't like math and I wanted to figure it out myself by just looking at it. So now I feel pretty confident that's a little bit closer than what it was. So now I just set up myself a rule of thirds guide. Now you can actually lock these guides under View, Show, Guides, right down here. Down here, Lock Guides. Now notice how it took me time to find that. Why did that, I should know Photoshop so well, I should jump to it. That is not the case, because when you're going in and out of different programs, they put it in different ways. Like Illustrator is different, how they show you the guides. But that's the point, that even for people who have been on something for a long time, have to take the time to find things. And so the reason why Adobe has monopolized the industry is that they're very intuitive. So if you can't find something, go to Windows. Under Windows somewhere. So now I have that set up. So now I'm going to jump to, I want to take any questions. So I'm going to stop the share right now. Does anyone have any Photoshop questions before I go back into more Photoshop tutorials?
Yeah, I actually have a Photoshop question.
Sure.
Um,
Go Splashy.
you mentioned it before where you could go to the image and change the parameters,
The resolution.
the resolution. Now, I know that you're gonna upload all of this just for, but I know it takes some time. Where exactly did you go again to get the resolution?
Okay, good question. I'm going to do that when I jump back in and
Okay.
share my screen.
All right.
Anyone else have a Photoshop question?
Yeah.
I'm Rebecca.
My question is just about like whether or not you can scale down. Like you said that you can't scale up, but say you have a really high resolution image, like can you scale down?
Good question. I'm glad you asked that. I don't always want to be the talking head, right? So the answer is yes. The golden rule that Rebecca asked, which is I'm happy that she asked that, is when you're doing print and you've toggled that image size to be what it is, and you've dragged and dropped your image into your deliverable, you cannot scale that image up, but you can scale it down. So I'm going to address that answer the same as I'm going to do Splashies, because I'm going to tell you of something that is important about that aspect, about scaling down, but not scaling up. So, and that has to do with the import, right? So I'll explain that. Christina, did you have another question in Photoshop?
Yeah, so I hit delete to get rid of the ants and fill comes up.
So you said you don't want to you want to Control D.
Okay.
Control D wipes away your marching ants. Control D. Control T, right? T for Tom. Control T scales.
Okay.
And that brings the scale to automatically on your layers.
Got it. Thank you.
So, yeah, and so when we have our session today at 2 o'clock, we're going to be sharing your screen for particular situations. I can't always verbally correct things, so I'd like to see your screen and give you guidance on your screen. So say, some things, the thing to remember about software is you can't solve all the problems. So if you get stuck somewhere, jump on another problem. Jump to something that you do know. Do not ever get stuck because you go, oh, I can't do it, I can't find it, so I can't do any work. That's not the case. I remember when I first was hired, I learned this very on. I was scared out of my mind. I didn't know the software. No one had access to the software. And somebody gave me a 30-minute demonstration and walked away and said, I'll see you back in 3 hours. I was like, and I knew one thing, but I would get stuck. And so then I just started exploring and going, oh, here's the tool that does that. And oh, here's the tool that does that. I never solved my problem, but I knew a lot of other things because I started exploring until they came back and answered my question. And then I always, before I bugged anybody in the studio, I always worked on it for at least 10 to 15 minutes, trying to figure it out, and then I would ask them. So it's important to know that when you're cracking software, the bells and whistles are not going to come easy. It's going to be a struggle, but in your struggle, you will always be learning. I can't explain that any better than that. So let me share my screen and answer those questions that Rebecca had and Splashy had, and also hopefully Christina. So you should see my screen now. And I want to talk about that question that Splashy asked. So it's under image size, and it's right here. So the important thing is do not, and I say do not have this toggled down here. You want to have the resolution to be 150. So basically, once you set up your deliverable, that deliverable is always a blank document that has nothing in it, but has all the parameters of what they want. 150 DPI, 13 by 19, RGB. That's the deliverable that the art director wants. So that's a blank document. So when you bring in all your assets into it, you're making sure all the photographs. So when I go here, like the tidal wave, I'm going to bring this tidal wave in. First of all, I'm going to double click. I want all of it. I'm not subtracting anything, because you can subtract in the actual composite. You do not have to subtract in the document by itself. So now I'm going up to my image size, 72. That's not what it is. So I'm going to toggle this. This is off, 150. And now it's only 6 by 6. I have to live with that. Again, now here's what I wanted to share, Rebecca, which was a little answers to your questions about scaling things big and small. When you drag and drop the tab like this, and you drag and move it into the composite, it keeps and maintains the actual size of what the document actually is, right? That's why I like the drag and drop into the file, because I know even if it's tremendously big, I can always scale down. Now, the other way to bring things into Photoshop is this way. File, where is it here? Place embedded. Really bad name for import. Place embedded is an import. Now, why do they have place embedded? And notice place linked, right? There's two tools here that you should really understand. First thing, place embedded means no matter what size that document is, if it's 20 inches and you're bringing it into a 5 by 7, it will scale it down to fit in the 5 by 7 format. So that means it takes the big image and tries to fit it into your 5 by 7. Now that doesn't help me if there's one particular thing I want in that object to be larger. But you know, consumers want things to come in and they want it to fit, right, and so forth. So if you know you need to have it fit and you're not scaling it like in our hyperrealism context, you could do a place embedded. It does let you only do one picture at a time, where file open, if you selected 20 pictures, file open will open all of them. But place embedded lets you in place one at a time. Now, why is it important that they have place linked versus place embedded? The difference is sometimes you need to be working with the composition and the photograph that you have is a placeholder. Or someone else is fixing it. But you need it until they're done, right? You need it to get your composite together. So when you do a place linked, it means that it's actually not embedded. And when you close out the file, it is actually not embedded in there. It gives you a preview, you can see it, and you think it's in there, but it isn't. So when somebody is working on that other file, the one that is not done yet, they will work on it, change it, whatever the art director has or the client has changed. And now they've given you an email that says, hey, I changed a lot of things in your linked file. When you open it, you'll see the changes. So when I go back to my Photoshop file and I go File Open for my composite, whatever they have changed will be changed in my final piece. So that is, whoops, sorry, let me go back, that's Zoom. So that's why place embedded is, let me get rid of this behind me. That's why, that's what linked means. So that you can work with placeholders until it's done. And that's a very commercial situation. So I'm gonna move this in because I have 10 more minutes and I wanna show you some more tools for extracting. So I'm just gonna mouse down and drag this in. And I'm gonna close this out because I'm done. And remember, don't overwrite your source. The most important file, and again, just a heads up reminder, remember to always save. So File, Save is a Control S. So my hand, I'm a right-hander. My left hand is always on my keyboard going Control S and saving my file progressively. Save every 30 seconds. You can get a lot done in 30 seconds. So save every 30 seconds, Control Z undoes, Control D gets rid of the marching ants, Control T gives you the transform tool, and so forth. So now I'm going to place this wave here fairly on my, I don't have the top, so I'm going to keep it focal point to be, I could do the sun on the focal point. Haven't decided yet, but not a big deal. Let's go to get some more pictures to extract. So we walk through the quick mask tool. Does anybody want me to do the quick mask tool again? Okay, you're good.
Okay.
Okay.
If you could, that'd be great.
Okay, so I'm going to do it fast, Matthew, because it's going to be in the video tutorials. Okay. So again, remember what I said, double click on this lock, duplicate, just in case you mess something up, turn it off, turn on the marching ants, take your brush and quickly and now you could use the mouse bucket to even do the bucket and fill, but just remember, I found that the bucket doesn't always blend to the edge, so I get sort of the edge on that. And if I make a mistake, we erase it. So people love to use this tool because you can really just paint around what you want. And then turn it off. And it automatically knows whatever you are painting, you want it. So then I can just hit delete key. And then I can mouse down, bring this into my hyperrealism. You know what I forgot? The image size. 96. All kinds of sizes come off of Google or public domain. Be careful. So now I have that. Get my hyperrealism back. Take the move tool, mouse down, and get my bird in there. No. Now I'm going to show you something because I have 6 minutes and I can show you this and you can go back to the tutorial on this and we'll do it again. And this is using the channels. Watch me how I use the channels on this. This is when you want to extract something that has too much detail, like lace. Lace is really hard to clean. This will help you clean it, or trees or things like that that have detail. So first of all, what you want to do is to double click, duplicate, just in case I make a mistake. Turn this off. Now I have it. Now the channels are right down here. Often they're with your layers along with the path, and we'll talk about the path and channels in the next session. But right now we're going to talk about this one. One layer on, go to channels. Here is the RGB. What I am creating right now is what we call a mask, similar to the quick mask, but in a way to make it black and white. If your mask is black and white, it will pick up 100% of the image. If your mask has any grays, it will pick up 50% of the image. Okay? So that mindset is important to remember. So now the trick here is to find what channel gives me the best contrast. Obviously, it is this one. So you see it's one channel selected. I right click with the mouse and you're going to duplicate the channel. Why is it important to duplicate? Because you don't want to mess the channels up. That is messing up your picture if you mess up the channels. So this is an additional channel separate from the main ones, the RGBs. So you see it made the copy. I turn it on, but I want to turn off so it doesn't, these are not affected. Only this will be affected. Now what I need to do is I need to take my zoom key, which is this one, Z, and zoom in, just somewhere generally. You have to kind of pull back because sometimes you lose things, but this is good enough. Now I come up here to Image, Adjust, Levels. This window pops up. And what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to make this layer that is a copy of the red channel be black and white as best as I can. So I'm going to push my levels. A little black first and then a lot of white. Now I'm going to cancel that and do it again. Levels. Sometimes you can push it with that and it does a good job. But these tools here do the better job. This will be white and this will be black. So wherever I click this, wherever that eyedropper goes, it will turn it white. So you see I'm down here with the eyedropper, it will turn it white. Now I don't want to lose my blacks, so now I go to the black eyedropper and I choose my blacks and get them as black as I can. I'm going to say okay. I'm going to zoom in more now because now I've got a lot of gray still. Go back to that image, adjustment, levels, back to the eyedroppers. Now I'm going to get my blacks to be black again. And now I'm hitting the grid. So you can see I'm coming down here and I'm deciding upon how much black do I want with these trees and branches. And now I think I'm good. Now I want everything to be white. So I go to my white eyedropper and I'm selecting the white. And that's probably getting rid of the light gray of the clouds. Say okay, come back to view, fit on screen. Wow, that's pretty good. A little bit down here maybe. And I could get really picky, mouse down on the space bar. I can make those black. Come back here, adjust. Oh, I only have a minute, so I'm going to finish this up. Hold on. Fit on screen. Now I have it black and white. Now I come down here to my marching ants. You can see them. Marching ants are on. Now I'm going to rebuild. Hit the layer right up here. Now the layers are rebuilt. Come back to my layers and hit delete. I'm going to get cut off, folks. Remember, this isn't a video tutorial. We're going to do it again. And I'll show you some other ways on the bridge. So I'm going to control D, get rid of those marching ants. And if I'm just going to undo this again and watch what happens when I inverse it. And hit delete.